Okay, so let's talk about a little bit. So what I found, this is the process that I see, and please pipe up if anyone disagrees or has anything to add or thinks I left anything out of the process, the editorial process. So first, you have to have some sort of relationship with the editor or the photographer. Whether it's just one meeting, something, you have to meet that person. I've never gotten a cold call for editorial. It always came out of my relationship either with a photographer or a relationship with someone at the magazine. So you can request the meeting, however you do it, just request meeting with, that's the other thing we haven't talked about. You can request meetings with the magazine editors, but also look around at photographers at agencies that you like younger agencies if you're just starting, and call those photographers and ask for a meeting. And just ask for a meeting and sit and talk with them and show them what you've done, and because those photographers are putting the stylists up for everything too. They're putting us up for everything when they can. Especially if you're shooting portraits, tests can be enough to show people. You don't even need the full book. But as you start to develop the full book, it's really good to go and show both photographers and the fashion editors what you're up to, what you're doing. I mean, just like I was doing with the Vogue photo director, I would just go, even though I was already working for them, go and show them, get them to critique it, and that's how I knew what I needed to shoot next. So, so then so you start the relationship, and then eventually you're going to get hired, you're going to get commissioned. And so when the commission happens, you basically just work out your dates. And after you work out and confirm the dates, that's when the creative starts. I don't normally like to do any intense creative, I'll have a conversation with the editor about what I would do, but I won't do any inspiration work, research work, presentation work until I'm commissioned and it's done. Because we just have too much going on to do that kind of work. Because you got to keep the gold back. Because you've seen people make the mistake of doing the full creative and handing it over to the magazine, and then they'll go get someone else to do it. Doesn't happen often, and people who do that have crap ethics, but it's really good to kind of protect, because your creative in your presentation is very much like your gold, it's what you sell. So when you do you do the creative inspiration, usually around the same time you're also dealing with the budgets. You got to be really clear about your budget from the magazine. So and people get weird about money in fashion. People get weird money in general, but I'm always really straight up. What do I have for assistance? What do I have for shipping? Can I use your FedEx numbers? Do you have a messenger service? What else? Do I have any kind of wardrobe budget for undergarments? Especially if you're shooting celebrities, sometimes they need different Spanx, nipple covers, all sorts of funny little things like that, right? So just from the beginning, knowing what the budget situation is, and then and the minute also you get commissioned, get those credits, because your credit list is everything. Everything. So you ask them, and it's sometimes, and you also need to get a commission letter. Let me just write that in here. Pardon? Oh man, you have to have a letter of responsibility. Well, there's a letter of responsibility and there's the commission letter. So the commission letter is what comes from the magazine, just proving that you are actually shooting for them. So, because you can't really move or do anything until you have your budget, your letter of your commission letter, and your credits. Because you can kind of do inspiration, but you can do inspiration and creative before, but that's going to be affected by your credits. But the good magazines, and you can make a request for this, is once you've done your creative and you've had your creative and your presentation and your research and all what you want to do for your story is done with your editor, then you can also talk to your editor about making sure that you get assigned credits that fit in that. I've had something a super glamour story, we were shooting glamorous women, it was supposed to be politicians' wives kind of thing. It was when the Obama campaign was happening. And the commissioning editor, the market editor, gave me a whole bunch of jeans brands. And I'm like, I can't shoot jeans. Sorry. It's just, this is the concept. And so I kind of had to very kindly, I don't always just take whatever they give me. I mean, sometimes you have to. They'll be like, no, really, you need to make this work. And you figure it out and you get really creative. And that's solving a puzzle, which I love. But sometimes, it's going to be like, oh, okay, wait a second. Is there any way I can have like, I don't care if it's I don't have to give me Louis Vuitton, but at least give me someone who makes dresses, or give me someone who makes suits. I'll shoot like St. John or whatever it is. Like, bring it on. So like those three things are really important before you can do anything. It's your commission letter, your budget, and your credits. Uh-huh. So letter of responsibility, this is how I distinguish it, and you can tell me if it's different, Angelo, or anybody in here. Letter of responsibility is saying that my company, when the clothes come into my responsibility, that I am responsible for them, so my insurance or whatever, if I lose them, I pay for them. Commission letter is something from the magazine saying Sally Lyndley has been commissioned to shoot this story, blah, 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 with this photographer on these dates in New York, basically for this issue. Please loan her clothes at her own responsibility. It's something like that. And when you start working for the bigger magazines, it's really important to have. And that's also the unethical stuff that happens, which we'll talk about tomorrow, when they make up fake commission letters. And they just take I love it when I heard the other day that someone had done a Vogue commission letter. And like Vogue doesn't let anyone do requests but the market team. So there's no such thing as a Vogue commission letter. So it's just like, really? Like, people are ballsy. So that's what a commission letter is. And then the credit list is the advertising list you get. And the budget's just usually based on wardrobe and assistant fees and that kind of good stuff. And then the next part that I always like to work on, especially after the creative is approved with the editor, is the creative team and assistant team. So I really like to look at, based on the creative that you and the editor have chosen and you're really excited about, you figure out who's the best person to do that hair. Who's the best person to do that makeup. And the photographers are usually open to working with who you want to bring in. It's always another great conversation to have with the photographer of like who, and this is also the time to have a conversation with the photographer to start with, like talking to the photographer about the hair and makeup that they want, like who you think they would be good to do the, if you want like a minimalist ponytail, it's going to be a totally different person than if you want like a huge beehive. It's usually two different, and then I think also it's always good to give 3 options for both hair and makeup of people you would want to work with, and prioritize them, because there's a bookings editor for the magazine that's usually handling it, and she's just going to have to be working through these options, and they're not always going to be able to get a hold of you to check with you. Does that make sense? So, so the creative team, it's so important. Manicure. Everybody forgets about the manicurist, but I'm telling you, manicurists are important. And then the assisting team. And I like to, I have a full-time assistant, but for a long time I was just working with assistants based on the jobs. And I would kind of look at, it's the same as doing hair and makeup. Different assistants have different aesthetics. And it's really good to talk to them about their voice, even if they haven't really, like the conversation Adam and I had the other day about his voice and what his favorite things are, because you get an idea of what someone's going to be really good at. If I was doing something super romantic and Adam was just a freelancer, if I was doing something super romantic and kind of goth and really modern, I would be calling Adam to help me prep it. Because I know that that's really his aesthetic, so he's going to be really passionate about that. So, and the assistant team is so important because they're usually, sometimes, if you're lucky, there's a market editor who is handling the requests for you. And so the market editor only handles requests for the magazine. And their job is to just organize all the credits and make sure all their advertising and credits are being shot, and to call things in. And it's another way that the magazine knows, like, there's no fake commission letters out there rolling around. Like, they have, like, Vogue has the most insane market editing team. They're like, they take such good, as a stylist working with them, you're so taken care of. And you're completely freed up to be creative because you don't have to worry about requests. Because requests are the biggest and hardest thing that we do on editorial jobs. So, and we're going to get into that in a second. I'm trying to go faster, but there's just so much to talk about. So, okay. Casting is the other really important part. When you're doing these teams, I highly recommend finding a casting director to work with. And there are also young casting directors who are just starting out, who are still assisting a big casting director. They have the relationships with the model agencies it's just so much of a load off of a stylist work plate to have a casting director to do all that editing, because it's so much work. I love model agents. I have a lot of dear friends who are model agents, and I call on them when I'm doing really specialized projects, but you need those casting directors because there's just thousands of girls and guys. There's thousands. And they know, and they have the relationships where they can just call. And also, casting directors are very creative. Like, you can say to them, I'm looking for someone that looks like Brigitte Bardot meets a geisha. You know, and right? And it sounds kind of crazy, but they'll go out and find it. And they love, and that's their creative expression. So it's amazing when you can find a couple, I always try to get like a couple casting directors I can really like trust, who also, you have to watch out for their ethics too with casting directors, because it just can get easy to find people who like say they have really great relationships and then they don't, and blah, blah, blah. So you wanna make sure your ethics are aligned with when you work with your casting directors. Yeah, so that's kind of the team that you're really building for an editorial. And then the next part of the process is the requests. And I have done a lot of time breaking down requests and trying to, because we go through over 2,000 steps for one shoot. It's insane. I tracked it once, like between all the phone calls we make, the emails we make, the confirmations, the requests, the substitutions, the going back and forth, going back onto style.com and looking for what we need, adding credits, taking credits away, re-prepping. Like, it's so many steps. So, I mean, that's why Vogue has a team of 6 doing it. And like, when you have your own little stylist practice, it's like, me and an assistant. So, you have to be so organized. This is where the operations and the logistics gets so, so crucial. So I'm just gonna read a little bit here. Requests are the backbone of a stylist editorial business. And it's in our business, our editorial business is really our calling card. So the request, it's all of the vital information that the PRs need to choose whether they're gonna work with us or not. Because that's what they're doing. The PRs are creative too. And no one really treats them that way, but public relations, the people who handle the samples, they're making strategic decisions on behalf of the company of who they're gonna give their clothes to. Because in a lot of cases, the whole world is sharing one set of like samples. So and then I'm like, oh, I have really good taste because I'm always losing my clothes to like Grace Connington and like all this kind of stuff. It's like we like the same look, and so I don't get it, Grace does, and I'm totally cool with that. But it's just kind of like, oh. But so these sample people in the public relations department, they're having to choose who gets what. And that's when our relationships with them become so important. And not only just, it's not about being friends, it's about being like trustworthy, and their clothes always come back on time in the most beautiful shape. Like they're not like cramped. I mean, once I was with my friend who's doing PR, I was watching him unpack. There was like a beautiful couture Versace, Atelier, what is it called? Atelier Versace Couture. Is that what they call the couture line? Versace Atelier. And it was Atelier, which those dresses start at like $25,000. It was crammed literally in the paperback, like a brown paperback, returned like that. And I was like, got to be kidding me. He was like, huh?
From somebody big, obviously, if they got couture.
Well, yeah, right? Like they were from a big magazine, they're doing a huge couture story, but it got returned like in a ball. And he was like, that person's never getting those again, the couture again. I was like they pay attention, So it's the requests. So there's the process that you design to take care of the requests. I always recommend using email, doing follow-up confirmations because people like to hear your voice, but it's just the email. But then like wacky things happen with email, stuff will go into a spam folder for whatever reason, so you just have to call and follow up, send more. I mean, like the silliest things, right? Like once I didn't get a Marc Jacobs dress because somehow my thing went into spam, and they were like an advertiser and a huge thing on the shoot, and I was just like, oh my goodness. So like you have to put in your logistics and operations process of how you're gonna check every time. And as much as I wish we could be computers and remember everything, we just can't. And that's when making a checklist for yourself that you just go through, and it's so simple. It's like, you're like, okay, I have my request checklist. You have everything that you put in. And also another thing that's really important is when you're emailing the PRs, the public relations departments, you have to tell them all the details about what you're doing. Because otherwise it becomes okay, well, who are you shooting with? You know, it's like they need to know everything. Like as much as you can tell them the photographer, the subject, I don't like to tell them inspiration because that can get a little bit weird because that's kind of what we hold. Most of the time you can tell them if you're shooting a celebrity, like tell them. It'll help you get clothes in most cases, I mean, if you're shooting a Jersey Shore cast member, it might be a little bit hard, but you know, it really, or if you're shooting, like I was just shooting a whole bunch of supermodels, and it's like, I tell them, look, I'm shooting Giselle, I'm shooting Agnes, and I'm shooting Lauren Hutton, and I'm shooting Rosie. You know, it's like, it's gonna be major pictures, major pictures. And that way they can make you know, because they're strategizing too. So that way they can make a really educated decision on whether to give you the looks or not. And if they want to overnight it, or you know, whatever's happening. So just make sure you give them all the information when you send your original request. It's so important. And then I like to, when the requests start, then so do the storyboards. And before you do requests, I always like to make a storyboard of all the looks that I want. So, yes, it takes time. And you know, like at a place, like at Vogue, they do printed out storyboards, which I travel so much that I have to keep everything on my computer. So I just make a PDF. You know, I'll use like I'll put them all in iPhoto and it'll organize them for me. Or you can do in Adobe and Creative Suite and InDesign, you can have your assistant create it, or even you can pull them from style.com, put them in there, just so you can see everything that you're requesting together. And also it helps us to figure out, okay, are we on story? Like, is this my voice? Is this the magazine's voice? And is this the story that I want to do? And you can really start to see once you see all those clothes together. Not that you'll get everything on your storyboard, but it's a good place to start, just making sure that you're already in the right stories. So you create the storyboard, and then from the storyboard, that's where I start working from requests. And in order to do the request, you need a database, which is always a fun thing. So I keep my database in my Mac address book. It's super simple that way, but I usually use Lookbook. Is it the lookbook.com? Yeah, the lookbook.com. I mean, they're up to date, everything's there. As long as you have internet connection all the time, like they have everyone. Like I had to find Alaya, like in 24 hours, and they had Alaya's, like I was able to get, and that's really hard information to get. So, but having your database, the other thing that's really important about your database is you can keep all your creative teams and information in there. But in order to start the request, you've got to make sure you have the right contact. I mean, that's another breakdown that people have all the time, is that they're emailing someone who hasn't been there for 6 months. And so you're not gonna get your clothes. So it's really important to like check all that stuff. Even though it's annoying and irritating, it's like a fundamental like thing that you have to do. Okay. And then the market. So what I like to do is, and we've just kind of started putting this in place with our intern team, and with my assistant is having my assistant do market, which just means going to look at all the showrooms, see everything that's there, see the new designers, see the new accessories. And when you do that ahead of time, it makes the whole request process and storyboarding process and so much faster. If you already know what's in the showrooms, and so like if you have days off or whatever, go do market. It's like the best thing a stylist can do for their business, especially for their editorial. Was that enough on requests? Do you guys have any questions about that? Because it's kind of a big no. Yeah?
You know, sometimes with designers, like Alaya doesn't have necessarily a show, but they'll have more accessories than you can see on style.com.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get a picture of what's in the
That's usually what I'll do is, yeah, that's the market process. So that's why we do market, because not everything's on style.com. And sometimes the things I want are not on style.com. Like you have to go in and see all the amazing accessories that didn't make it into the show. Or sometimes there's like 5 or 6 dresses that they still have in the showroom that didn't make it to the show. So it's really good to do market yourself if you can in the beginning, because I just see things differently than my assistants. I also will just send assistants and have them take pictures of everything. And then you have a file for the season of all of the accessories that are available, especially from the brands that you love and the brands that you shoot a lot from advertising, like for advertising. It's just good to have it. It's like, because it's not on style.com. Anything else? Yeah?
When you're doing a shoot, do you usually take the ones like, I mean, would you go with like the bigger trends of the season? Like, I mean, like the specific pieces, like, you know, like last season's Balenciaga, where it's like everybody wants them? Or do you go like normally towards like the more like,
It depends on my story, and it depends on my inspiration. Like some things, I always like to mix in new designers when I can, because I think it's just more exciting. Like, and then there's also a certain, there's this certain luxuriousness and respect that you get from being able to shoot Balenciaga.
right.
Does that make sense?
If they only had like a specific number of samples to send out, and you know that like magazines are already requesting, would you wait for that?
It's like I can't. I'm always on a time. You're always on a clock. So it's like I have to just figure out what's available and then make it work. That's when the puzzle thing starts again. You know, and sometimes it's like if I really want to shoot Balenciaga, and the great thing about Balenciaga or any of those kind of brands that are super directional is that usually you can get almost any look from that show and be okay inside your story. Sometimes, or at least there's like 4 coats that are really similar. So I'm like, you know, that's what I tell them. I'm like, look, I don't need all 4 coats, but if there's any of these 4 coats are available, then bring it on. You know, and so when you're kind of telling them that, when you're talking to the publicist like that, they get that you respect that they're handling, you know, a gajillion requests and they have 4 coats. So you kind of start to, it's all negotiation. It's all negotiation contract, you know, going back and forth and like figuring out what works for them and what works for you and like, oh, that color doesn't work, or, you know, that's why it's like the more information you can give to them, the better. I mean, does this help? I've never, you know, like the negotiation thing is huge.
It's the whole part. That's like the million emails that you do back and forth. Like with one shoot, because I file as they come in, like as soon as I'm done and I answer and like put the little notes on whatever designer it is, I file it. And if you can go into like any folder, there's like over 800 emails just on one shoot. It's
crazy. I mean, because we're negotiating over and over and over again with the 20 to 30 brands we're working with. So, you know, I mean, even when we're working with like a vintage, you know, I love working with vintage stores. It's one of my favorite because sometimes you can get an advertiser who may not be that cool anymore, and you can find it in an old version of it. Like I remember I was doing a denim thing and I ended up going to Screaming Mimi's and pulling a whole bunch of like old Guess denim and Levi's and all that kind of stuff. And actually Guess and Levi's couldn't get stuff to the shoot on time. But I was able to go to the vintage store and get all the vintage stuff, and then they were still getting the credits. The magazine was happy and it worked inside my story. So sometimes it's about being resourceful, you know? Like sometimes with the credits it's like, I can't get the Guess, you know, especially with some of the like Guess and those kind of people, they don't make samples on time, like they don't make samples on our schedule, so you're left to your own devices to figure it out. Okay, what was next? I mean, anything else on requests? I'm trying to think if I left anything out. I mean, it's like, all negotiation.
Also etiquette and like emailing etiquette and like how you speak to people. Because when I first started, when I was at V, like I used to speak to them in like a very different way, and like Yuki was even like, you can't call them girls, you have to call them ladies.
It is. It's back to manner
like,
school.
Hello again, girls, and they would be like 2 women in a PR agency, and he'd be like, Angela, you have to, like he would respond to me on an email and take them out. He'd be like, call them ladies, like they're in their 30s.
Yeah, I mean, so this is the one thing I love about fashion. Like, Vogue started as like a place for ladies to like work until they got husbands, which I love about Vogue, and fashion magazines in general. And the cool thing is it's gone from there to what it is now, like a serious career, right? And you know, but there is an etiquette. Like there are a lot of the people who are running the show, you know, they know like thank you cards. You know, you address people professionally and kindly. Like, it's common sense stuff. And that's where the kind of like, in fashion, there's this informal thing that people do where they sometimes think you think you're friends. It's like, no, you're not friends. This is a professional relationship. You must be respectful. It's so important to be respectful. So, yeah, that is really, really important to like treat people with the respect and the etiquette and I mean, it's like you're writing a letter. I mean, I have 2 copies of Emily Post's Etiquette. And I refer to that stuff all the time. And the more polite and the more people are willing to like respond to you and get back to you, and all that stuff is totally taken in by those PRs. Because you're right, they get a lot of like one-word emails. I mean, sometimes a one-word email's fine. But when you're doing your initial request and you just gotta take care of people. It's all about taking care of people. Customer service. Customer service even when you're doing your PR requests. Okay, so anything else on requests? What about storyboards? You guys, I mean, they're pretty cut and dry, right? You just put all your looks together. Great. And then market. It's really important to distribute your inspiration to the team. Like once it's done and you've chosen the creative team, even to your assistant team. Because the assistants will know so much better how to take care of you. And your interns will know so much better how to take care of you if you give them your inspiration. So visuals always help. Then you go through the looks confirmation, which is basically just the last step of that negotiation process with requests. And then shipping and receiving is huge. I mean, so many breakdowns happen. But you just have to make sure you have an incredibly reliable process for your shipping and handling, checking things in when it comes in, making sure it's the right look, all that kind of good. And also make note of how it's packed so you can pack it that way again. Set organization. So when you get to set, I like to set up backstage, like in my area, like usually like back here, like the 2 rails, I organize them by credits and by priority, because sometimes clothes have to leave early because you can only have them for half a day instead of the full day or the full time. So I always move that stuff to the front. I move my favorite things to the front so I can be really inspired and look at the pretty things instead of some of those scary credits you have to have sometimes. And just also, sometimes there's requests from the magazine. Just make sure you have all the requests from magazines. Like they might need you, because as the credit process goes on and you get closer to shoot time, you're like, okay, I definitely need you to shoot this credit and this credit. So just make sure you have all that information when you get on set. And getting your accessories table lined up so you can see everything is so important, because we're visual, It's like we're totally visual creatures, and we're doing all this other business stuff, but if something's in a corner, like in a garment bag hiding under the thing, you don't even know, like it's not even in, so it's so important to set it up. I like to set up like a really beautiful boutique. It's like how I like to think about it. So, you just want to make sure the presentation, it's like you can think, you can keep everything clean and organized and all that kind of good stuff. And if you're assisting and you do that, your stylist will love you, like love you. It's a whole nother world when your assistant keeps everything feng shuied and perfect and organized, and because then I can see and think and, and then move things away when you've shot it, or just into another area, not like pack them away, but just move them to another area, because then you're like visually organizing yourself as well. And then final looks. I like to do looks before I get to the shoot. Like once I know what I have confirmed, I like to say, okay, these are my favorites. These are the ones I'd really like to shoot. I know I'm shooting this many pages, like that. And things happen and change. And I also try to like to put like the jewelry or whatever accessories I have, like try to pre-style it with, and not on a person, but just kind of looking with runway pictures, looking at what I have and putting it all together so you have a rough looks idea when you get there. And then you finalize looks, and it's like it's done so, I do it really quickly, but it's done so thoughtfully. You have to, because it's like you've done all this prep for this moment where you're choosing these outfits, right? And you're telling your story, and you're looking, and I try to look at my inspiration, so I'm like totally keyed in on my voice, my story. And it's just, everything could go really wrong at that point. And I've had it go really wrong, where I just totally lose sight and end up shooting stuff I don't like and whatever. But that's why like all the prep, like, and I like doing looks before, because I'm super organized. When I get there, I can just work on making those looks even better. And it just becomes the tweaking and refining moment. And you really see, and you really make sure that the story and the character is where you want it to be. And then it's the fun part of starting to shoot. And we talked a lot about how, working with photographers and making sure it's where, it's like, and it's one of those things where it's like you have to speak up. You have to have the courage. Like if something's wrong, you really have to stop everybody. And it sucks. And sometimes you're there till midnight and you're so tired and you're dealing with all that. But it's like, you can't, it's your picture, and the magazine editor doesn't care if you were there all night. They care if the picture's good. So it's like being able to have the courage and the focus to stay to your voice, stay to your story, and take care of everybody at the same time. And then while you're shooting, it's so important to do a sitting sheet, whether the magazines ask for one or not. And it's basically just a list of everything that you're shooting, like per look. So you just and write down the designer's name and the prices if you have it, where you got it, who you got it from, the look number if you have it, like everything. The sitting sheet is so key because no one remembers after. We're all in the moment doing like whatever we do. And it's like, I remember because I have like a weirdo photographic memory, but I always can't remember the price or the look number. But it's so important to put that information down.
Especially with jewelry.
Jewelry is insane. It's insane. Yeah, like it's really good to take pictures. Yeah, it's nuts. Yeah, get the girls.
Yeah.
I mean, I like to do pictures of the full thing and attach it to the sitting sheets if I can, because again, you're taking care of the magazine editor. The magazine editors will love you, and the market directors and editors will love you, and they will be like, when's Sally coming back? It's like these simple little things to take care of people. And sometimes I was even doing flip videos for a while, which was really cool because you can just flip video someone, and then you can just send the video to the editor, and I would just speak what they had. And that was really easy because sometimes like my assistant was doing 5 other things, and it's just another way to do it. You can figure out your own process. What else? The other thing that make sure to include on your sitting sheet is the entire team, because it's the stylist's responsibility for whatever reason to write down hair, makeup, manicure, and then of course all your assistants, because that's one thing that we do for our assistants is, give them credit. So make sure all the assistants and interns that work on the project are credited, and all that should go on the sitting sheet. And then it's like wrapping up the shoot. And this is like another etiquette thing. I feel like wrapping up, I mean, the assistants have one thing to handle the wrap because they're shipping and handling, right? Like shipping and receiving all starts to happen again. And you've got to get everything where you're going to get it to go, and you're going to pack it up really pretty and all that kind of good stuff, make sure all the documents are in there. But the wrap up is so important as the stylist, and even as the stylist assistant, to say goodbye to everyone. I mean, this sounds like the most simple thing, but people don't do it. People just bounce, and it's like you've been working on this creative project with someone sometimes for days in a row, and it's like you gotta properly wrap it up, edit it, do whatever you're gonna do with the photographer to make it complete for the day. And I think it's just so important to do that. And then follow up. I'm one of the few stylists that I like to get involved in the retouching because I don't sit in there and retouch with them, but there's so much we can do and make sure that a wrinkle is retouched out, or that her waist is slightly smaller, or small things like that you can tweak on clothes, or like the belt is like doing something funny and you can have them fix it. There's all these kind of things that are so important to our styling that we can sit and tweak in retouching with the photographer. And it's really easy. They send you an email, you send them back, and the photographer loves it because then we're also helping them. So that's one really important thing. And then I like to do thank you notes for everyone on the shoot. And it's like another etiquette. It's so important. People love it. I've gotten repeat jobs from people and recommendations just because, it's not just because I write thank you notes, but people need to know that you appreciate them. And it is a creative collaboration. And as stylists, we can't do it by ourselves. We have to have the entire team there to do it. So. Okay, cool, so that's what I have for editorial. What do you guys, any questions?
International shipping, it's just like, I don't know who knows or who doesn't know, but there's first of all, there's customs, and you're just praying that your stuff doesn't get stuck there. And there's also performas and how to properly ship things.
Yes.
And you have to write everything down. If we're sending Sally's outfit back to Rick Owens in Paris, cotton or silk jacket, silk blouse.
It's insane. You can, I'm trying to think of who has. If any of you guys need international, I can send you an international performa, what those look like. I am happy to send it to you. Just let Adam know in the back, and we'll email you what those look like. Because it's really complicated. It's negotiation again. But it's not negotiation. It's knowing there's certain fundamentals. You can't ship certain things. There's certain value you have to put things at, like $1. Yeah. If you put it at, any kind of, certain values, you go over $5, and suddenly they're gonna hold it. You have to take things out of the box. Sometimes it's you take the shoes out of the box, you ship the shoes, and you ship the box separately, because then it will make it. like just weird kind of funny things like that. So yeah, if you have any more, like want any more information around international shipping, what'd you say? Yeah, yeah. So let me know, I can help with that. So I want you guys just really quick, we're gonna take a break in a second, but just really fast for 5 minutes. I want you to get back in your pairs and just talk about anything new that you didn't know about before, and where you think that this is gonna be the fun exercise, get you guys talking about everything. What you didn't know before, and then where you think like strengths and weaknesses with the process, like what you're really good at and what you think that you need to work on more.